What's up and welcome back to my channel. It's been quite a minute since my last video. I thought I couldn't end 2025 without my yearly favorite video to film, and probably the only video I ever film on this channel, which is my favorite books of the year. 2025 was a bit different for me. I had a reading goal of 50 books as I usually do, but I, for the first time, did not kind of rush myself through my reading in order to meet said goal. I kind of took my reading a lot slower this year. I took my time with every single book I read, and it made it so that, yes, I didn't reach my goal, but I found some really interesting books, and like books that I am really excited to talk about, and books that will stick with me for quite a while. So I'm quite happy about my reading year despite not reaching my goal, and I encourage all of you to not put pressure onto your reading as well, and to not compare yourself with people online or maybe your friends. Reading's supposed to be fun, and a goal is supposed to be a little arbitrary and something that you use to motivate yourself with reading, but not necessarily something that you push yourself so hard to accomplish that then you don't really enjoy the experience of reading itself anymore. That's my take on that. I'm not gonna go in any particular order. Every year I always say I don't have like a top 10 and then I go down to 1 or my favorite all the way to 10. These are all favorites for different reasons. I have 4 stars in here, 5 stars in here, and I have different genres, different writers, and I will explain why I like each book, but there's not one that I liked more than the other. I just enjoy all of these equally. We'll start with the series that I started the year with, and I'm counting this as one because it's a trilogy, but I read all 3 of them in January, and it was my first time reading them as an adult, as a 26-year-old, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but I read the Hunger Games trilogy for the first time in 2025. The Hunger Games is the first novel, and then Catching Fire, and then Mockingjay. I had never partaken in reading the books because when the Hunger Games craze was kind of happening, there was also kind of like Twilight happening at the same time, and like Divergent and etc, etc, and I was definitely more of a Twilight girl. I love vampires, I love werewolves, I love the lore of Twilight. I read all those books, watched all the movies, and so I never really just got into the Hunger Games of it all. And I hadn't even watched the movies. To this day, I still haven't watched all the Hunger Games movie. I'm sorry. I really need to get to that, but the books are excellent, and especially considering today's political climate with Israel and Palestine, this is such a accurate depiction of what's going on today and what was going on even 10 years ago when these were published and written and produced into the big movie corporation that it is now. And I absolutely admire Susan Collins for what she did with these books. They're still relevant today. It's for a reason. They are targeted for teens, but I think everyone should read them, and I'm so excited and happy that I have these really cool editions, like the black ones. I think they're really pretty. These books contain some of the most interesting, intriguing, and relatable social political commentary on the society of, yes, Panem, but definitely our current day society and climate, and really do think that people should talk about them more in depth. And there's just so much more to the characters of Katniss and Peeta and Gale, more than just their love triangle as well. I think there's a lot there that can be explored, and I've watched countless video essays on the Hunger Games books, and there's a few that I think were like so poignant and so good in their observation and analysis. I might actually link a few that I liked a lot in the description box if you're a Hunger Games fan and you haven't stumbled upon some of them. I think this universe is so good, and you know, I annotated it very lightly because it was my first read, so I was really taken with the books, but I can't wait to reread them and actually like annotate pretty much every single page. I think they're really special books, and they're worth the pickup. If you haven't read them and you're an adult and you never really got into Hunger Games, or if you read them a long time ago when you were a kid, I really think that you should give them a second shot, maybe in 2026. And of course, after finishing the original trilogy, it was only right for me to read the rest, so I definitely picked up the Songbirds of Ballad of Snakes, which is my next favorite. I gave this 4 stars. It's a prequel to the original trilogy. It's the story of Snow, President Snow, when he was a young teen, and he himself participated in the 10th Hunger Games, if I'm not mistaken. It's basically a villain origin story. That's what people have like kind of described this book online, and it makes you kind of understand and see Snow in a different light. I don't agree with the fact that people say it makes you empathize with him necessarily. His hunger for power and his ambition takes over him quite a bit, and I'm trying not to spoil it. I haven't done this in a minute, so sorry if I say too much or too little. I think the takeaway of Ballad in Snake for me was not necessarily that we were supposed to empathize with him, but that everyone has a backstory, and this backstory is not necessarily the fuel for somebody's wrongness, if that makes sense. And I can't wait to watch the movie because I heard that the movie's really good, and I've seen like little clips, and I think the chemistry of both the main characters mirrors really well what Susan Collins here did. And like, I don't want to romanticize their relationship because it's not meant to be, but it's a very core and interesting part of the story is Coriolanus Snow's relationship with his sweetheart Lucy. The next book I read during Black History Month. Every February, I mostly read books by Black authors. I think for me it's very important to try to broaden my library with Black authors, specifically during a month where we celebrate our Black history and our Blackness. So I read Why We Can't Wait by Martin Luther King Jr., and it's basically a collection of his essays that he wrote around the civil rights movement of the 1960s. Some of these letters were written while he was in jail in Birmingham, and some, letters from Birmingham jail. The most famous essay of his is in here, but also like some are before that and some are after that. And it's basically, to paraphrase, the title is basically a compilation of the ideas that Martin Luther King was trying to perpetuate in the 1960s of why we Black folks can't wait any longer to receive our rights as people to exist, and for segregation to be abolished, and for racism to cease. This essay collection is so good in so many ways. I think, you know, we often think of Martin Luther King as, yeah, he was this innovator and he brought a lot of change, but I don't think that we talk about his words and what he wrote and what he said, and the way that he's paved the way for so many more activists today, but also like how dangerous it was for him to do so, and how much was put on the line for him to fight for us, for the future. And I think this is super healing to read, and it's super real and poignant, and I think it's a text that we don't hear talked about often. Wish that could change and that we would mention him more often. I love this book. It was really great, and it's just a collection of short essays. You could read it over a course of time. You don't have to read it in one sitting. And yeah, continuing on to my train of the greats, the great writers, the great Black writers of our time, I will go with Recitatif by Toni Morrison. This is just a short story about two girls. One is white and one is Black. Toni Morrison wrote this story in a way to confuse and kind of expose our stereotypes and our vision of the other. So we, as the reader, don't know which of the girls is white and which of the girls is Black. Therefore, you spend the story kind of trying to put things together and piece things together. And this edition has a really great introduction by Zadie Smith. If you want to go into it after reading the story, she kind of depicts and kind of like analyzes and picks apart the story to kind of like make you question who you thought was who. It's one of those Toni Morrisons that's not really talked about a lot because it's quite short, but I really think that there's a lot in here that can be discussed and pulled apart and critiqued and analyzed. And I would actually really love to reread this in like a book club setting. I think it would be like really, it's one of those stories that you want to talk to with other people who have also read it in order to kind of see different point of views and why certain people should think certain ways. And yeah, it's definitely like a 5-star. Next book I want to talk about is a book that I bought this year, and then I pretty much automatically ditched my entire physical TBR to read because I was just so excited to get my hands on this book and to just read it. It's been out for quite a while. It's won the Pulitzer Prize a couple years back, so maybe that gives it away, but I read Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver this year, and It is a delight. It is so delightful from the first all the way to the last page. If you are a fan of heartbreaking but hopeful stories in a way, this is right up your alley. It is quite long. It's right at just a little bit 500 pages, but every single page has something in there for you to grasp, for you to devour, really. Like, that's really what happened with me in this book, is that I just devoured it. I loved every single moment. The way that Barbara Kingsolver characterized Demon Copperhead, the main character of the story, was so fascinating. And I love that you don't necessarily root for him, but you don't also like hate him, and you feel for him and you want him to be better. And his entire entourage, every single character you meet in this book has an impact on said person, and that is in itself a commentary on our realities as people and how much we impact and influence each other. Even if you feel like you are such an insignificant person in somebody else's life, you might be everything for that person. And it's about relationships, romantic as much as familial, as much as friendships, and how they can linger over time, over the years. And the story spans over quite a few decades of his life. And the author was herself inspired by David Copperfield, the book by Charles Dickens, which I haven't read, and that you don't need to read, especially to come into this book. It was just something that she was inspired herself by and fueled by. I definitely have interest now in reading that book, although it is very daunting and intimidating by its length. If David Copperfield is touching the greatness of this novel, then I feel like I have another favorite book on its way to my TBR very soon. This book also touches on the opioid epidemic. Trigger warning for that. I would definitely check the trigger warnings for this book. There's a lot that happens. It could be quite heavy. I would put it on the same sphere as A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, which is my favorite book, but I loved it. The last 3 books I had to read for my last semester of my English degree, and I'm so excited that I found them through these beautiful, amazing classes that I had to take this semester. And a few of them, well, actually like 2 of them, I don't know that I would have gotten to without having been assigned them. So I'm really excited that they've now made it to like my pile of favorites for the year, which is so cool. I'm gonna start with The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler. I had to read this for my detective fiction class. It's considered to be a hard-boiled kind of fiction novel. It takes place in the 1930s, and we follow Philip Marlowe, who's a detective who's trying to crack the case on this family who are the Sternwood family, and he's kind of trying to crack the case on what's going on. And they have such an immense amount of wealth, and said wealth has allowed them to a lot of secrecy over the years, and Philip Marlowe is basically there to uncover it all. A novel of its time. I think the depiction of women is quite surface level. It's not like the best, but mystery aspect of it all is absolutely intriguing. I did not want to put this book down when reading it. It's filled with commentary on money, wealth, on gambling, on who deserves to be at the top of the social class and like social rank. And there's a lot of questioning of masculinity and femininity. And I love this. I actually wrote an essay on it because I loved it so much, and I was really proud of that essay. I think it's one of those novels that's like, you could get through it fairly fast because you want to know what's going to happen next. And it's a good one. And I love this cover. I love it so much. It's so 1930s, like detective fiction novel. Like, it's so that. So yes, love this novel. I did say at the beginning of the video that I don't have a favorite book of all time for the year, like my favorite book of the year, but I think I might have been mistaken, because this year I read for the first time Hamlet by Shakespeare. I know, for the first time it's crazy, but I never got assigned Shakespeare reading in high school or middle school or elementary. Like, we never had to read Shakespeare, so I never really did. I had a poetry class 2 years back where we read a few of his sonnets, but I've never read a Shakespeare play. I read The Tempest for a reading drama class like 2 years ago as well, but hadn't read his tragedies and or comedies. And this year I took a Shakespeare class and I read 6 Shakespeare plays. So I have fallen in love quite literally with Shakespeare in like more ways than one. I think he's really complex and difficult to read because the English is very old. But I think there's so much wisdom and so much to take from all of his work. And Hamlet was my favorite, hands down. I definitely wrote my final Shakespeare essay on Hamlet, and it was a whopping 6 pages long of me just yapping about this. A story about a young prince, Prince Hamlet, who one day gets a visit from his fallen father, who tells him who has killed him and to avenge his death. And Hamlet takes that request from his father and tries to fulfill it. Basically, you following him through his torment and through his grief, and kind of falling into this madness, which scholars have debated and are debating and will forever be debating on if it's a real madness, if it's a feigned madness that has turned real, or if it's all a ploy for him to get to avenge his father at the end. And he has some of the best soliloquies in here, and I know we all know about to be or not to be, that is the question, but there is just so much in here. It is so rich. And obviously we have Ophelia, who's she's written quite blandly in my opinion, but she is so important in like the discussion of Hamlet as a novel, as a story. And she is an important figure in Hamlet's life, and she takes such little space in the story but such big space in the reader's mind. There's a reason for that. And you know, I didn't quite get into Ophelia's lore because I was so taken with Hamlet's, but there's a lot there with Ophelia for sure. But talking about the soliloquies, I have my personal favorite, which is somewhere around here. My favorite soliloquy is Scene 2, Act 2, line 261, and Hamlet is talking to his friends from university about the feelings that he has been feeling now that he's quite deep in his grief, and he's kind of realizing that his father is forever gone. And he says, I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, forgone all custom of exercise, and indeed it goes so heavily with my disposition that this goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile promontory, this most excellent canopy, the air, look you, this brave overhanging firmament, this majestical roof fretted with golden fire, why it appeareth nothing to me but a foul and pestilent congregation of vapors. What piece of work is a man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable in action, how like an angel in apprehension, how like a god, the beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. And yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Like, I really feel him of like, you know, when life just gets too rough and everything just loses its essence and nothing quite feels right, and you can't find the joy in the little things, like your cup of coffee in the morning or just looking at the trees, and like nothing feels right. Like that soliloquy is that, and it's him as he's trying to do this faux madness thing, kind of realizing that he's also falling into a real madness as he realizes that he doesn't enjoy life the way he once did now that he's lost his father. And this feeling of loss, yes, for him it's grief for grieving a father, but it could be associated to everything else in life. It could be the loss of a friend, a loss of a partner, a loss of happiness. And that's why I loved Hamlet so much. Maybe I should have kept this book last. It's easy to just like kind of, you know, dismiss Shakespeare because we're often like told that, oh, he is the greatest writer of our time, or he's been the greatest writer of the, you know, English language. He invented words that we still use today, which is mind-boggling. There's a reason why he is put on such a pedestal, and I think Hamlet is his magnum opus. I still have to read Othello and a couple other plays. I have to read like King Henry. I really want to read Romeo and Juliet, but Hamlet for me, I don't think can be dethroned. And the last book I had to read for my degree was none other than Emma by Jane Austen. This was my second Austen. My first one I read I think 2 years ago, and it was Pride and Prejudice, because of course I had to start with Pride and Prejudice. I, in popular opinion, prefer Emma as a book. I know the character of Emma is extremely morally gray. You don't really, she's not made to be likable. She's not written to be likable. I don't think Jane Austen meant for her to be likable, and that's what I liked about the book. I think writing characters, especially main characters that are not easily digestible, is the best way to hook me into a story. It can make me like not quite hate the character but not quite like them. It makes me want more. It makes me want to keep turning the pages, and I think Emma does exactly that. It's filled from page 1 till the last page with commentary on marriage, on women, women's place in society, on money, on wealth, on class, and it's just packed with goodness. It's so rich. Literally, my copy is filled with writings, explanations, and I can't wait to revisit this book. We also had to watch Clueless in class, which is a modern adaptation of said novel, and I do have to say that Clueless is a beautiful adaptation and a very accurate modernized version of this novel. So I do recommend like kind of like consuming them hand in hand, kind of finishing the novel and then watching Clueless pretty much right after, which is what we did in class, and I loved it. The movie is great, the book is great, and now I do have to watch the adaptation that has Anya Taylor-Joy in it. I really want to watch that, and yeah. So these were my favorite books of 2025. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you have your own list of your favorite books. I would love to know what you read this year, even like if it's like your top 3 favorite books and why in the comments. I will read all of them. I read all my comments all the time. Let me know if you'd like more videos from me next year. I want to maybe gain a little consistency and kind of upload a little bit more. I just don't know what you guys would like to see from me. So let me know. I'll be seeing you guys hopefully fairly soon. So thank you for being here, and see you next time.